Hello, everybody. Welcome to Peace and Parental Alienation Syndrome. My name is Glenn Sollers, and welcome to episode number 9. Today, I want to talk about forgiveness, first of all, and then I'm going to get into personality disorders and what to watch out for in an effort to make sense out of things. As I've been looking through different disorders and understanding a bit more about the mental side of parental alienation, it's really expanded my knowledge in respect to me, in respect to family history, in respect to what's going on maybe for my child and the alienating parent. And I think all this brings for me a sense of peace of mind and a greater understanding of what might be going on. Now, keep in mind, I am not an expert in this. This is just based on what I'm learning through the internet, through a lot of different podcasts out there as well. There's one that I started listening to, and it's titled The No Contact Club, and it's specifically about narcissism. And it was just outstanding. I loved listening to it, and it was kind of like binge listening to the podcast because it was just so amazing. Another one I was listening to was talking a bit about the fact that you may not be dealing with what is rational on the other end, okay? And what that means is that they say 60% of alienating parents have some sort of disorder, and it could be narcissism, histrionic, paranoia, antisocial disorder, borderline personality disorder. Know that you may not be dealing with somebody who's rational, who knows how to resolve problems. And it's not about getting upset about that. We all have certain things that we do or don't do. And we're all on, like, for example, narcissism. We're all on a certain spectrum of narcissism. And I looked at, when I started reading about narcissism and everything, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that sometimes. And we all do. For example, I'm a people pleaser. I want everybody to be happy. I feel it's up to me to make everybody happy. When everybody's happy, Glenn can be happy. I grew up also kind of like as a codependent to my mom. I felt like it was up to me to make my mom happy because I went through a lot of different violence in the home, and I was kind of like the peacemaker. It's great being the peacemaker. However, there are consequences of it because as a child, I felt like it was all up to me. Now, as I go through this episode and talking about the different personality disorders and different things to watch out for, again, it's important to have compassion. And we all grew up a certain way. Many of us have had struggles. There's people I know out there that lost their father at a young age or lost another parent at a young age. There are people out there where maybe their parent left them at a young age. And can you imagine being that child and what goes on for you? It just makes me sad thinking about it. And especially if a parent has left for no particular reason. And as a child, we learn to adapt, but then we're also dealing with the behaviors that our parent has, that parent that is the one that's taking care of us. And we start adapting to them and understanding this is how the world works. And we're missing a balance there between two parents because two heads are better than one. And what they say with anybody who's been alienated or has gone through that or has gone through a difficult time as a child, there's no time or no space or no ways to process emotions because the single parent might be super busy. And I'm not saying anything against single parenting. I think it's powerful when parents do that and takes a lot of energy. However, I know for me as well, it felt like my mom was the only one parenting. And there was things to do in the house. There was things to get done. There was a lot of fear. And I ended up not knowing how to process my emotions. There was really no dialogue of emotions. And what happens is children who go through this kind of thing may have challenges actually managing emotions in a healthy way. And it leads to patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking. So have compassion. And also, things can be passed down from generation to generation. So as an adult, the alienating parent, or you as the alienated parent, have certain traits that have led to this. And in a normal family or just in business, in the world, we see things happen like war. There's one side and the other side. There's no real peace making that happens, and people get destroyed and lives get destroyed. And we may have learned over our time, well, that's what you do. You must destroy the other person because they're worthless. Just get rid of the problem. There's two sides to every story. Again, the thing to keep in mind is you may not be dealing with somebody who is rational. And for me, what I try to do was resolve the problem. I felt that was the right thing to do, and it didn't work. Now, there could be reasons for that. I was very persistent. I wanted to get things solved. I wanted everybody to be happy. And those types of behaviors that I had, yeah, I can see there was some contribution to this. But at the end of the day, if we think about the family as a whole unit, not just about me, but my child's relatives, my child's cousins, my child's friends, if I can think that way, I am more likely to want to resolve things so we can create a healthy future. And this is the thing, is history can easily come in and we can just go based on our default programs in terms of what we think is right or wrong. And then the pattern will continue. Or, and it may be too late in my situation, that somebody says, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to break this pattern. We all were dealt certain cards in our life. And some of us will play the game of life with those cards. Others will realize, you know what, these cards, they may have served previous generations. Maybe they worked for my parent when they raised me. I don't have to play the same cards. I can choose to change my programming. Think about your childhood. Think about your ex's childhood. What went on in their life? What did they have to deal with? What would have been the consequences? Think about your child's life. What did they have to deal with? What could be the consequences? I'm going to go through the different personality disorders and different traits now. And again, be mindful, I'm not an expert. I'm not a counselor. I'm just sharing what I've learned through the research that I've done. And to just learn for these, and rather learn from these, so that you can consider, what played out in my relationship, or what's playing out now, and what can I do to change things. The first one I'm going to talk about is borderline personality disorder. Here are the symptoms: distorted self-image. This could be that I feel insecure, but I'm portraying out there that I'm very secure, or I think I'm this way, but I'm really this way. There's this feeling of, and I can imagine if people have this disorder, that they would feel very isolated. And there's a sense of emptiness and sadness there. People with borderline personality disorder have huge mood swings. So they can be super happy in one moment and super angry in another moment. So there are these mood swings that go back and forth, and they're very severe and happen all of a sudden. High anxiety, and that could be anxiety of, for example, that somebody might be out to get me. I better watch out what's happening out there. Don't trust this person. And I think, like I mentioned in previous episodes, trust is a big one. If you don't trust people, life can be very, very challenging. There could be loss of routine. Sometimes to an extreme, there's suicidal thoughts, and sometimes there's a bit of a delusion. So that's borderline personality disorder. The 3 disorders that are also associated to parental alienation, I'm not going to speak so much about. One is histrionic, and this disorder, I'm just going to read some points here. Some of the symptoms are they're very uncomfortable with themselves unless they're the center of attention. And I'm just laughing because, first of all, it's the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial is going on right now, and she was diagnosed with this. And keep in mind, like, you can read these things and say, oh my gosh, do I have this disorder? Because I like being the center of attention. I think a lot of us do. And but there's this thing where they're uncomfortable if they're not the center of attention. It was interesting when I look at my father, and when he and friends were together and I was sitting at the table, my father would be very quiet. And then when he started drinking more, he would start becoming the center of attention. And he would dominate the conversations. And I look at my life, and I'm a facilitator. I become the center of attention. You think of actors out there, they become the center of attention. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has this disorder, but it's just funny how when you read these things, it can be really eye-opening. It continues here. I'm just going to go through some other things. They dress provocatively or are very flirtatious. Emotions do change. So a lot of these disorders have a huge emotional component. And keep in mind, emotions are the root of behaviors, and how we feel is how we show up. They're very dramatic, like they're performing in front of an audience, and they exaggerate their emotions. They can be very concerned about what they look like. And I think about, again, I'm just laughing at these things because I think about myself. And I can be concerned for sure. I want to look good in front of other people. But keep in mind that I think most of these things, we all have like a natural tendency to want to look good. And we all want to be valued and do something of value. However, I love talking to people who are in their 70s and 80s, and they're like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be who I am. But we've learned to do this. Like, if you think about our school system, we have to conform to a certain way of being. This is what is acceptable. You need to get this grade in math. You need to get this grade in biology. You need to behave this way. We kind of become robots over time. And it's no wonder that we lose who we really are. And then we feel sometimes, like I know I felt like I had to be somebody else that I wasn't. I was very artistic when I was a kid, and my father was very factual and science-based, and I had to change who I was, and I had to try to change to try to fit into what their expectations are. They constantly seek approval or reassurance, and yeah, I do that for sure. I want to have some approval. And again, keep in mind, I think most of us are like this. They can be very sensitive to criticism or disapproval. Okay, they take things personally. Now, I've had to learn how to not take things personally. I used to do it a lot. When I was a kid, my parents always said, Glenn, you need to try harder. And it's not good enough. You have to do something different. It takes a toll. They have a low tolerance for frustrations. They get bored easily. They begin projects without finishing them. And I do work on personalities, and there's 4 distinct personalities out there. and there's someone called a driver, which is go, 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 go. They focus on results. There's one out there that's called analytical, and they're all about information, data, analyzing things. There's people out there that are amiable. They're people pleasers, want everybody to be happy. And then there's expressive people who share ideas. They're very creative. But it's when I read this point, an expressive person doesn't like finishing things because that's no fun. It's fun to start things, but it's not always fun to finish it. Right? So there's nothing wrong with these things. Okay. And I want you to be clear on that we all have different things that we do. It's when things get into overdrive, or when we are so much like if somebody is all about their physical appearance, and what they do every time that they go out in public is that they put on makeup or they dress a certain way. That is, in my opinion, more of a disorder. When it must be this way, when you hide oneself and when you're out there with others, you have to portray this image. That's unhealthy, because then you're not being your authentic self. And I think authenticity is important. People with a histrionic disorder also don't think before they do things, so they're not as objective. They make rash decisions, and they are very self-centered, and they don't really show concerns for others. Now, if I think about what I've been through in terms of alienation, I am concerned about me. However, what I'm more concerned about is the impact this has on my child, the impact this has on my family, the long-term effects this has. And so somebody who doesn't really care about that, maybe there is a tendency there to be more histrionic, but who knows? This is the extreme part when I was reading this, is they have a difficulty maintaining relationships. And they also seem fake or shallow when they're dealing with others. But here's the extreme thing. Like, they'll use threats or attempt suicide just to get attention. Okay, so that's histrionic disorder. The other one I want to just talk briefly about is just paranoia, that you're paranoid something's going to happen. Like, somebody's out to get me. It was interesting when we took my son a long time ago to another country in Europe. He was very worried in public transit that somebody would be out to get him. And it was so hard to comfort him, to be with him. And I was saying to him, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Nobody's out to get us. We're good. But there's this level of paranoia that could be instilled in children based on what the parent might be going through and their paranoias. So that is another challenge. And it's not a disorder, it's just being paranoid. It could be something that alienating parents do have. The other disorder is antisocial disorder, and that kind of ties, like some of it ties into the histrionic disorder, but that is more just not being in social settings, not wanting to be in social settings. Maybe you're at an event and you are all alone and not around others, and so that could be an example. For me, I find that when I go to networking events, I hate going to networking events, and like just talking to other people, I find that I can be very introverted at times. And when I did some more thinking about this, is why don't I like going to social events, or not social events, but more networking events? It's because for me, I like to be real with people, and I like to have deep conversations. If I don't know people, then I find it a bit more of a struggle to have deeper conversations about different things that are meaningful to me, and meaningful to others. Like, I don't like talking sports. I don't like talking about the news. I like talking about, what's going on for you? What's happening in your life? What are you dealing with? And I find that just much more fulfilling. The one or disorder, you could say, or the one personality trait that I want to spend most of my time on today is just around narcissism. And there's a lot of different information about narcissism out there. And narcissists and narcissism, there's a certain scale. And folks, we're all somewhere on the scale. Some of us are higher on the scale, some of us are lower on the scale, but we're all on the scale to a certain extent. The thing about extreme narcissism is they need food. They need to feed off something or someone so that they feel better about themselves. Typically, narcissists grew up very insecure, and they feel very insecure now. So in order to not feel insecure, they need to feed off people that are mostly compassionate, empathetic, caring, so they can create a bit of a codependence on them. It's like food, because it allows them to be in a power position and feel good. And this could come from never feeling good as a child, feeling insecure as a child. So now that somebody values you, you want to hang on to that. Now, I'm going to go through the different traits of narcissism. The first one is that they want to win at all costs. There is no middle ground. Either I win, but if you make me lose, I'm going to lose you. I'm going to get rid of you. And that's just important to know. So if you're trying to fight a narcissist, if you're trying to win or trying to negotiate, you're going to have a tough time. So with narcissism, sometimes you have to let them win. And this one podcast that I'm listening to, they say that you have to let go of people sometimes because they just want to win for themselves. Now, in my case, I was trying to win for my son, for my family. Whenever I was discussing things with my ex-wife and with my counselor, I was saying it is healthy for him to have a relationship. Let's work through our problems. But a narcissist won't do that. A narcissist wants to win. And if you work through the problems, they may not win. Another trait, extreme emotional mood swings, either super happy or super angry, and it's quite severe. What I experienced at times when my ex wanted something, she'd be so nice, and she was incredibly nice. We actually had a really good relationship where I helped her out. She would say, Glenn, I need some help doing this. I would go over there and help her out. But then if I didn't do something, or if there's something didn't go her way, complete opposite. There was a time where I was late picking up my son, and I contacted my ex-wife. I said, you know what, we're in unforeseen circumstances. I'm going to be late picking up my son. And oh my gosh, I just had all these threats thrown at me that I'm going to take your son away. How dare you be late? And this is extreme emotions. And again, keep in mind, depending on how you grew up, it's important to have compassion, which I do now. I didn't have compassion back then. I was like, why are you doing this? But now I get it. It's just we've learned maybe not how to process our emotions, and that's how it comes across. So there's these two extremes. Another sign is if something doesn't go their way, they get rid of them. They get rid of people. I can't tell you how many friends I've lost. Something doesn't go somebody's way, and you cancel them out. They're gone. Problem's gone. Let's not work through it. Let's just cancel things out. And folks, if you're listening to this podcast, you're one of them. You are canceled out. Now, there's likely something that led to you being canceled out. For me, and I didn't get this until afterwards, was I went through a bunch of self-awareness training to do some healing on myself, to figure out what can I change in me so history doesn't repeat itself. And there was a time, and I wish I wouldn't have done this, where I finally set boundaries with my ex-wife. I said, what's happening now has got to stop. When our son is with me, please let him be with me. Help give me the tools that you're using with my son so that I can help him with his anxiety as well. And I was too open with her about my true feelings and how I felt in the relationship. And in that moment, she lost a friend. She lost somebody who was supporting her. Somebody she kind of, I guess I could say, relied on. But I held my boundaries, which I never did. I never held boundaries or created boundaries with my ex-wife out of fear, mainly out of compassion for her. 3 months later, I lost my son. 3 months later, I lost my son. Now, they generally want power and control, and they want to feel better than others. Alienating parents, if they can use a child to feed their ego, they will feel good about themselves. They're getting the love. There was a case that I heard about where a child told an alienating parent that they're leaving. They're done. And they were at an age, I guess, where they started to see the truth. What happened was, and this is just what I heard on a podcast, folks, I don't know the details, was that the alienating parent killed the child and themselves. So with an alienating parent, if they don't have the food to feed off of, if you're, in this case, only if you're a narcissist, I guess, that would be the main thing. How do you survive? You need that outward recognition that I'm important so that you feel good about yourself. And if that recognition all of a sudden says, no, I'm not going to be part of this anymore, what do you feed off of? What's there? There's a other trait around black and white thinking, that there's no middle ground, that it's either this way or that way. The one that impacted me, and again, I don't know like what my ex-wife is. She was actually a really kind person, really caring. We had a great relationship. Everything was fine. Again, everything fell apart when I set some boundaries. But I lived with her for many years. And I have a lot of compassion for her. And again, this is what's coming up for me when I share what I'm dealing with, is that we all are who we are and we do the best we can. However, we need to sometimes just take a step back. And that's what alienating's done for me, is for me to take a step back and realize, what do I need to change? What are those things that I'm doing that aren't working? And I wish there was more education on this when people go through a divorce around what to watch out for. Self-awareness training, because we can have a huge impact on our kids. And if we don't know that what we're doing is having an impact, like a negative impact or a positive impact, then how can we work with it? And when it comes to manipulating, I just want to share one story about this, because it really came across when my son told me, Dad, I don't want to live with you anymore. I sleep here. And I said, why? And he said, well, my stepbrother's gone and he took his PlayStation. And I said, okay. And my son said, buy me a PlayStation and then it will allow me to have some more fun here and have some friends here. And so what I did was I bought him a PlayStation. when he came to visit, he said to me, "Dad, you're trying to manipulate me. That's why you bought the PlayStation." I was dumbfounded by that. And I felt like I couldn't win. I felt like there's nothing I can do here that's going to please my child. Narcissists also want to feel like a victim, and they'll let people know that they're a victim. And they'll also guilt people if they don't get what they want. So it's all about you. It's not about them. They can do no wrong. You're doing all the wrong. Glenn, you don't know how to communicate with your child. You're the problem. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. Wow, I dealt with so much of that. And yeah, there was things I shouldn't have done. I'm a parent. I have faults. I do the best I can. But when the other side is all good and you're all bad, that's when it becomes a problem. So there's a lot of aggression within people who are narcissists, and they feed off, again, others. And this is called hoovering. Like, they'll suck the life out of people so that they feel good. But then those that they suck the life out of, from what I hear on different podcasts, they develop their own personality disorders. And I think about, my father was like a narcissist. And I'm dealing with the side effects now. Now, I've worked a lot on those. I spent the last 17 years going through self-awareness training, reading self-help books to work on me. And again, that, like I mentioned, that's the gift in all this, is I have become more calm. And I'm still working on it, more relaxed. I worry less. I'm letting go of things. When I listen to these podcasts, when I listen to all this information, things start clicking in. I saw a counselor and counselors. I've seen many counselors, because this has had a significant impact on me, on how I feel physically, mentally. One said to me, "Stop communicating with your ex-wife. Stop sending emails." And I was very persistent. I wanted to try to work this thing out, and I felt that was the right thing to do. I need to advocate. But I've always done that when I was a kid. Like, I was always very, very persistent, very, very driven to get things done. And they let me know, don't. I kept on feeding her. I kept on giving my ex and my son reasons for staying away from me, because I was very persistent. And I wish I would have taken that at face value. The last thing I just want to share around this is that alienating parents can create this facade that everything is perfect in my home. Everything's great. My son is great. My child is doing well. Look what's happening in our life. This facade of perfection. And I'm happy that, from what I hear, my son is doing very, very well. He now has his own podcast, which is great. And but I've learned through his podcast that he's a chip off the old block. He's also a people pleaser. Oh my gosh, be careful. I'm one of those. And anyway, it's just interesting. It sounds like he's doing really well. Now he's 19. Who knows what's going to happen when he's older, and doesn't have any connection to any of his family. But back when this was happening, I was talking to people about it, because I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to do. So I'd let people know, so this is happening. I haven't seen my son. And they said, "I'm so sorry." Now, in one of those situations, it got back to my son. that I was talking about the situation with somebody else. And he was 13 at the time. And he was so upset. And he said, "Why would you talk to people about this?" And I said, "I need to talk to people. It's important to talk to people about your problems. It's important to get advice, to ask for support. This has been very difficult for me. And yeah, I'm talking to other people." And he didn't understand that. He didn't understand that. And there's this thing that I learned about, that they live these artificial lives and they don't want people to know the truth about what's going on. So there is a certain level of shame in that, and shame is terrible. And I was not intentionally creating shame. I was creating, I need some support in this, what's going on. But with alienating parents, and this is just my judgment, my assessment, is they don't want people to know, and they will paint a picture of the other person being the problem with other people. And then what happens is nobody steps up. Family members don't step up. Nobody deals with it, which is so sad, because eventually that child's going to realize that I've lost everybody. We never worked through things. And how might they think about those family members that never did anything? Like, yeah, I get that when there's a divorce, you have to choose a side. However, think about the child. Think about what they're going through. Alienating children, you could say, are in a bit of a bubble of control, a bubble of, I'm the right parent. My way of doing things is the right way of doing things. They create this codependence. So they both feel safe, supported, and protected from a dangerous world. This bubble is difficult to penetrate, and the bubble filters everything. Whatever doesn't work for the bubble stays out of the bubble. So they might not let people in. They may see everybody as a potential threat. They feel unsafe when they're out of the bubble and very cautious. They want to protect the bubble. One example of this would be, I wanted my son to do some training on self-awareness. There's different programs out there. There's Landmark, there's the Mankind Project, programs about taking children into their manhood. And these programs are all about taking control of your life and knowing that many of us, like me, are a byproduct of our parents, which is not a bad thing. However, there's certain things that we might have seen as a child that has really had an impact and created some trauma, and has created a certain way of us thinking about the world. And I wanted my son to be part of this because it was actually interesting. My ex-wife motivated and inspired me to work on myself. And then when I wanted my son to work on himself, because of the power I got out of those courses, dead set against it. And when I thought about it afterwards, it's probably because if you allow your child as an alienating parent to really discover themselves, then you lose part of the power of having control over that alienating parent. How we are in the bubble is how we see everything else. Alienating parents likely don't want to break that bubble, because if they don't have that love, that care, that dependency that they've created with their alienated child or children, what does that make them? Folks, forgive. It's a hard thing to do. But with forgiveness comes peace. Imagine what they must be dealing with. Imagine what's happened in their lives. They likely, in some cases, are just doing what they think is the right thing to do. In other cases, they might be doing it for like malicious reasons. I don't know. We are who we are. We were dealt certain cards. We live our life based on those cards until we are willing to look at the cards of the deck that were shuffled and reorganize those cards or choose new cards to play with. We'll be locked in our patterns of behavior. Thanks for listening.